Okay, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday.
Good morning. It is Thursday, October 31st. We pray that everybody stays safe today.
All that, and it's Reformation Day today.
Right, and because not everybody is aware of what that means.
That means Martin Luther back in, I forgot the 1400s, I guess, 1600s, I don't really remember, but he nailed the 95 Theses on the Catholic Church door. It was basically protesting some of the things that the Catholics believe, and he had biblically sound reasons why he didn't like them. Anyway, and the other thing is, if you hear something chirping or making noise, we got the windows open and the guineas are running around close to our door.
We should do it outside, but we didn't.
Yeah, well, it's windy out there and it might rain.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're in that there. Today is another 3-part parallel. We're only going to read the first one. Jesus is transfigured on the mountain. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 17, starting at verse 13. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter and the 2 brothers, James and John, and led them up a high mountain to be alone. As the men watched, Jesus' appearance was transformed so that his face shone like the sun, and his clothes were as white as light. Suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared and began talking with Jesus. Peter exclaimed, "Lord, it is wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I will make 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But even as he spoke, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my dearly loved son, who brings me great joy. Listen to him." And the disciples were terrified and fell face down on the ground. Then Jesus came over and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." And when they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus. As they went back down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." Then his disciples asked him, Why do the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must return before the Messiah comes?" Jesus replied, "Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready, but I tell you, Elijah has already come, but he wasn't recognized, and they chose to abuse him. In the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer." Then the disciples realized he was talking about John the Baptist. And now the commentary for Matthew. The Transfiguration was a vision, a brief glimpse of the true glory of the King. That's in Matthew 16:27-28. This was a special revelation of Jesus' divinity to 3 of the disciples, and it was God's divine affirmation of everything Jesus had done and was about to do. The Transfiguration was a foretaste of heaven. The participants were doing something worth noting, talking together. In God's world, interactions count highly. People are individuals with minds, hearts, and opinions. People are also a part of a wider whole, connected by relationships built on sharing between whole persons. Friendship is the key. Make time and opportunities to talk with others. Good conversations act as training for eternity. Moses and Elijah were the 2 greatest prophets in the Old Testament. Moses represents the law, or the Old Testament. He wrote the Pentateuch, and he predicted the coming of the great prophet. That's in Deuteronomy 18:15-19. Elijah represents the prophets who foretold the coming of the Messiah. That's in Malachi 4, verses 5 and 6. Moses and Elijah's presence with Jesus confirmed Jesus' messianic mission to fulfill God's law and the words of God's prophets. So just as God's voice in the cloud over Mount Sinai gave authority to his law in Exodus 19:9, God's voice at the Transfiguration gave authority to Jesus' words. Peter wanted to build 3 memorials for these 3 great men. Peter had the right idea about Christ, but his timing was wrong. Peter wanted to act, but this was a time for worship and adoration. He wanted to memorialize the moment, but he was supposed to learn and move on. Jesus is more than just a great leader. He's a good example, a good influence, and a great prophet. He is the Son of God. When you understand this profound truth, the only adequate response is worship. When you have a correct understanding of Christ, you will obey him. Jesus told Peter, James, and John not to tell anyone what they had seen until after his resurrection, because Jesus knew that they didn't fully understand it and could not explain what they don't understand. Their question, Matthew 17:10, revealed their misunderstandings. They knew that Jesus was Messiah, but they had much more to learn about the significance of his death and resurrection. Based on Malachi chapter 4, 5 and 6, verses 5 and 6, the teachers of the Old Testament law believed that Elijah must appear before the Messiah would appear. Jesus referred to John the Baptist as fulfilling this role, rather than a reappearance of the Old Testament prophet Elijah. John the Baptist took on Elijah's prophetic role, boldly confronting sin and pointing people to God. Malachi had prophesied that a prophet like Elijah would come. Malachi chapter 4, verse 5. Like Elijah, not Elijah himself, but someone just like him. So that I know some people might want to say, "Oh, he was reincarnated." Mm-hmm. No, he is a singular human, a singular man with a singular soul, and so the prophet or the John the Baptist was another singular person with a singular soul, completely separate entities, but yet took on the role that Elijah took way back when.
Whereas Jesus is part of the Trinity.
Yes.
Different than them being singular.
Yeah. Right.
It's quite. There's a very important distinction between them.
Yeah. Okay. Hope everybody has a glorious day, and we'll talk to you later.